Beardy and the Beast Media Club.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba. This is a placeholder intro song.
Thanks for joining us for Beardy and the Beast Media Club, a full spoiler discussion into a piece of media. We will take those spoilers from the human realm to nurture as our own. If you enjoy what we do, please consider sharing us with your friends or join the discussion in the comments or at our Discord. My name is Drew, and we have recently obtained the Sword in Our Hearts. Devin?
Aw, I'm the sword in our hearts. I'm
Shut
a
up.
god.
Today we'll be discussing 2015's Studio Chizu animated film, The Boy and the Beast. So, Devin, was this film lost in its darkness, or was it saved by the connections it made?
So I think I'm a little more middling about this one than I was with Belle.
Mm.
Um, I I feel the story was still quite strong. Um, I could One of the things that jumped out to me is the noticeable difference in the animation.
Mm-hmm.
Like this animation um, felt a little more made for TV. Nah, not it felt lower budget. Didn't have quite the same quality as I saw with Belle.
See, I don't agree with that because it felt very much like a stylistic choice because
Hmm.
those backgrounds were so intricate and so, in some cases, even looked realistic.
Mhm.
I actually really enjoyed the simpler, kind of lower FPS animation of the characters themselves.
Okay. The place that I really found it, like, for the most part, it wasn't bad. It just found it stood out somewhat with, Kumatestsu.
Okay.
He was the one, like, I found it in particular with. Like, just some of the facial animations, I lost it a little bit because it was almost too simplified.
Okay.
It was still very expressive, just in a way that I wasn't expecting, um, from, Belle being the only other example of their films that I've seen so far.
Well, it's tough too. Like when you come into Studio Chizu with Belle as the reference point.
Yeah.
Like the animation was super high quality in that. Uh, Even though there was aspects of it I didn't like, I still acknowledge the quality.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, I've definitely noticed a couple of things that as we do more of the Chizu films, I wonder if it's gonna be consistent. I guess studio trademarks is a way that I almost wanna call it.
Yeah, I think
Um,
so because when you look at the was it the um cover of what is it, Mirai?
yeah,
It looks much closer to The Boy and the Beast than it does Chizu or
yeah,
than it does Belle.
yeah. But things that I did notice that were similar is, like, I noticed that same kind of shift in an animation style between the 2 worlds.
Mm.
It it wasn't as much, but there was a clear difference in how it was, so I noticed that kind of immediately. Um,
Like the environments definitely took on a slightly more cartoonish feel,
mhm,
and perhaps the otherworldliness, like the real world kind of physics, didn't seem to apply anymore
yeah,
when they were in this like realm of spirits and gods. Guess you could say.
yeah. It's a minor thing. Again, most of it comes from just, as I said, what I saw in Belle set my expectations differently, especially when we come from the Ghibli films,
Hmm.
where it's clear. Like, I mean, we've watched their latest one and their earliest one, and you can clearly see the same quality and style going all the way through. Whereas I kind of get from Chizu that we might be seeing them more as they're growing. So,
Well, I don't think just as an observation, I don't think they're gonna have a heavy hand of the uh, Bell style 3D animated cell shaded kind of feel. I don't think that's going to be a
mhm.
very common.
No, and I recognize that, but I think so. I guess it's better to compare the the scenes with Suzu as opposed to Belle with the overall animation.
Yeah, so Suzu with Ren
Yeah,
would probably be your closest abstract. It's And I kind of got a feeling that you would be kind of more like in the middling thing,
Hmm.
like a middling kind of point of view for this one. Whereas, though I do admit Belle structurally and character wise was probably just a hands down better movie.
Mhm.
I like Boy and the Beast far more
Hmm.
because this one just got me.
Yeah.
It grabbed all the little heartstrings of mine.
Mhm.
It's almost like it was tailor made for someone like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All the connections with, like, say, fatherhood and what makes a father and like mentorship and things like that grabbed a hold of all those heartstrings and all the things that like my mind tends to be occupied with these days, and just went like, oh no, this is a movie for you, Drew.
And that's actually kind of what I thought you would get from it too.
I was like halfway through and I'm like, this is gonna end up being a lost in translation thing 100%.
Yeah.
Just reverse this time.
Yeah. That being said, like, I actually really enjoyed the story. Really enjoyed the characters, the interactions between Kyuta and Kumat Kumatitsu was absolutely fantastic. I get that type of relationship, and it was nice to see how they built each other up. And I
Hmm.
got that impression almost immediately as Kyuta entered the world that would be the case, that
Hmm.
we that we would see them growing from each other. Um, and it leads up so well to the ending as well. Like, just that, no, we are one, and foreshadowed through, like, the Grandmaster talking about, it's like, can't tell which one's the master and which one's a student. And,
Hmm.
like, so it felt very fitting that Kumatetsu, sacrificed himself that way. And uh, I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed how they told you about in the they basically told you that was going to happen in the opening monologue, the storytelling bit, but you clearly had no indication that they were talking about that until after that change happens, with the two great ones fighting. And
Well, and that's the thing. The If I were to compare this film with all the significant failings of the Ghibli movies, um, so in this one, it's constantly alluding to things and creating like a series of foreshadowing, which it ends up paying off, and it was low enough that you don't, like, if you were looking for it, you would tell right away, but you're just enjoying the movie, you'd be like, oh, that's something they reference, like, oh, he's going to become an artifact spirit.
yeah,
Like, if he, like, he won't be able to become like a true god, he'll become a artifact spirit.
yeah,
And like he ends up intentionally doing so that he can like, save the day
yeah.
and all that. But if this was a if this was a Ghibli film, they would set up the universe saying, "Oh, there's a great war occurring because the prince went missing." It's like, "Oh, the prince was the scarecrow the entire time."
Yes, yes, you hate howls. Save it for when we actually cover it.
I'm gonna be knocked down a peg if I end up liking it. Uh, no, it's so the direct comparison is like the way that this film creates its foreshadowing points. Like the first third of the film is just littered with exactly how the ending is going to occur.
Yeah.
It pays off in a way that I guess is technically expected, but not in like a negative manner.
Mhm.
You know what was nice though?
Hmm.
Not having uh the arena combat be like the final fight, the final
Mm.
story beat.
Yes.
Having it go to like, oh, that other boy is actually a human and is possessed by darkness,
Yeah.
which I was questioning that right away, but I'm like, he's just wearing an animal hat, like no one else is wearing an animal hat. But
My my only question with Ichiro, yeah, I'm gonna go Ichiro. I'm not gonna keep adding the rest of it. Ichiro was I don't buy for a second you're an animal.
Mm.
I did think it was a daughter until the time skip, though.
You're talking you're talking about Ichirohiko?
Yeah.
Uh, oh no, I knew. No, I knew it was a boy, but I like the. It seemed like such a natural progression
Mm,
for that character. Like you definitely initially think, hey, this character doesn't seem to be an animal.
yeah.
Seems to be just a dude wearing a hat, and it's obvious that he's looking down on the human, but he's
Mhm,
polite about it.
yeah.
And then in the middle encounter after the time skip, is no longer being polite about it,
Yeah.
and then after that, just full dark side.
I'm gonna segue the themes with that.
Okay.
Um, it was one of the things that I think it was handled very well, um, was the idea of having no one to support you and having to be on your own versus having someone who's fully supporting you, and the darkness that can come from both of those things,
Mm,
right? So we have, Kyuta, where that darkness rises up because he found, like, he had that when he felt like there was nothing, got through it, and then loses, essentially loses his master, and the darkness just immediately comes up. And versus Ichirohiko, where he was just never told. He was just basically lied to for his protection throughout, which caused such resentment because nothing made sense to him. And it's interesting to see that how, I guess, that best intentions can still create that toxicity and hatred. And
well, yeah, it's about nourishing the heart.
yeah,
So the like Kyuta had nothing, had lost everything, and was empty.
yeah,
And through his caring but adversarial connection with Kumatetsu, that became more and more nourished.
mm,
Um, Once the confusion came around, especially after he went back to the human world, he started falling to that confusion, like without that nourishment, I guess you could say.
yeah,
And whereas if you were to take Ichirohiko, had everything, like looked like a wealthy family, well respected, was given everything, but it wasn't the nourishment that he needed.
yeah,
So he was again always confused, like, why don't I have tusks like you? Why doesn't my nose protrude like yours? Things like that. As his confusion grows, like as you said, he fell to that darkness.
yeah. It made me wonder immediately. It's like, I wonder if he was just honest with them.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think if honest, or I wouldn't be surprised if they came if it was a less well-to-do family.
Hmm, yeah. It's something with Ozen's family. Like, it's you're right. They're very well to do, very polite, but oh, there was the son, Juromaru.
Mhm.
Like starts off as a bully, but quickly warms up to Kyudo, and Kyudo shows he's capable. Ozen and Ichirohiko both, to me, kind of always felt two faced. It's that I'm putting on these airs, but I'm like, I don't like you. I don't trust you. And you kind of see that with Ryozen getting, basically slamming Kumatetsu for bringing a human in while he's been raising a human for a decade.
Mhm.
It's like, that's, and how did you hide it? Like,
With
honestly,
the
how did
animal
you hide
hat.
it that long?
I mean, I think the rabbit god knew.
Oh yeah,
At no point do I think he did not.
yeah. But it was interesting. It's like just seeing that difference. Like, and again, they were all about the appearances, and you have the two characters that were very much not about their appearances, building that relationship, finding that strength in each other.
It's because it was
You know,
genuine, and
it,
that means that the relationship was genuine too.
yeah, and it passes on to Kaede as well,
Mm.
where it's just you have these outcasts that find that strength in each other. So even though there's that darkness or or what have you, they have that support to go back on, which is
Mhm.
why in the long run, Kyuta doesn't give into the darkness. And when he does, it's like, if I will give into the darkness to save everyone because he knew he had that strength, which just wasn't there with the other characters. They could have the show, but not, very similar to what we were talking about. It's like, let me show you what it's like to live for today.
Mhm.
And that struggle made them strong and allowed them to actually find strength within each other, which is nice because it ties nicely into when they were when they were going and meeting all the other grandmasters as well. Because like none of them actually talked about physical strength.
Mhm.
They were all talking about here's the strength of an illusion or here's the strength of patience. To find them having that strength of unity was very well done throughout the film. And
It was
I'm glad they
super
did.
interesting in that like circumstance after they went to the other elders, and Kumatetsu's he ends up just coming up with the most sage like one himself, which is find the meaning yourself,
Yeah.
which was perfectly surmising like what the rabbit god was trying to teach him.
Yeah. It all tied together very well. Story wise, it's just bang on. Yeah, the themes were carried throughout the film. You saw it with every character interaction, and
Well, and
which is fantastic.
it stayed on track, which was really nice. It didn't deviate. I get with the two boys, Kyuta and Ichirohiko, they were trying to show two sides of the same coin.
Mhm.
Having some additional themes or sour notes to it might have improved the film a little bit.
Mm.
It's kind of like having like a little bit of a bitter taste in a sweet candy or something like that to make it a little bit more complex.
Yeah,
I actually couldn't suggest anything because I both appreciate that the themes were so on track, but also with like additional complexity.
yeah, and yeah. I can see exactly what you're saying about it. It's hard to like. I can't think of a good change that could have been there.
Oh, I just
One,
realized something.
oh,
Yeah, two sides of the same coin is definitely the correct analysis, especially when you consider that um, Ren had everything, was from a very well-to-do family, threw it all
mm,
away.
mm,
I completely forgot about that point, and I was actually questioning it during the movie, and I was like, what relevance was the beginning?
mm,
Like, I can understand losing his mother and not having his father,
yeah.
but like the wealthy family, what relevance was it? And it actually was very relevant.
Nope, you are completely correct there. As soon as you said that, I'm like, yep, no, that makes sense. It's interesting because I always wondered kind of what happened to the father.
Mm.
Like it was in the back of my mind when you meet him, and you realize it's like the father literally couldn't do anything. He was cut out,
Mm.
and to know that and kind of goes like, okay, well, maybe just deadbeat dad or whatever. And to hear that it's like, yeah, no, the police stopped looking a decade ago, and I never did. I'm like, okay, nope, that's and just
Well, that's the thing. It makes you kind of realize that I don't have any inclination that the mother was a bad person.
no,
I think that the father was definitely not of high standing and definitely came off as weak-ish, like in social standing.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure the father probably got pushed out by the family.
yes, a 9-year-old boy isn't going to know that.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, I think that in the end, that comes back and what sparks some of his darkness. Because of course, the 9-year-old boy is going to feel like he was abandoned, and when he hears that, it's like, oh yeah, no, you can come live with me and all this stuff again. Of course, he's going to feel resentful. Of course, that's going to be start seeing that darkness grow, right? Because it's just that reminder of your failings.
Hmm. Well,
Perceived failings.
and that's what makes it make so much sense that he would start falling to that darkness again
Mhm.
when his father was like, yeah, you like you can come over, and like was being too fast, wasn't
Mhm.
acknowledging the feelings of Ren.
If you're talking about a flavor difference, this is of course before we see Ichiroko. I'm going to pronounce that name different every single time. Before he really gets introduced, I'm like, okay, well, clearly this is going to be about him having to fight his own darkness.
Mm.
I think that's one of those things that could have been a spice that would have worked. Then again, they introduced Kaede, which changes that up. But my first thought was he was going to give in the darkness, and that's what the final conflict was going to be.
Mm.
So I thought that Spicy said might be Ichirohiko being the savior,
Mm.
help pulling him back, because again, clearly human, but always raised with the beast. So maybe that darkness wouldn't be there in the same way, much like Yozen thought. So I actually kind of did appreciate that they flipped that.
The flip, at least for Kyuta, I really appreciate because it did give you that feeling that it was going to be about him fighting his own darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And in the end, it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was more about acknowledging it and filling that hole
Yeah.
and what it takes to fill it, including those like emotional connections with everybody around him.
Mm-hmm.
So, like if it ended up just being if Ichirohiko was not in it, and it just ended up being a story about like him fighting himself, I think I would find it less impacting emotionally.
Oh, for sure. I was thinking it would have been. It definitely would have been, and they just did the right setup to have him not fall to the darkness, and there was a lot there that actually resonated with me as well.
Mm,
With the way the story was done, I think we kind of talked about this at the craft as well. When we're talking about like the balance,
mm,
right? You have to be able to balance out the light and the dark. Like just the advice he was given as he was starting to fall in the darkness a few times through, so bang on. He's there clearly scaring the crap out of Kaede. I'm literally going, oh God, what's going to happen to her? And I did that multiple times throughout the film.
mm.
I'm like, don't you dare hurt Kaede. And just that clear aggression, clear giving into the darkness, and she just stands up. She just basically stands there, slaps him in the face, and then gives him a hug, and goes, "I get it. I feel that way. You are not alone." And just instantly, is like, that's what you need to hear. That's what people need to hear to help get out of that darkness. A lot of times,
Well, it was
knowing you're not
impactful.
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're both light and dark. That's there. You have to know that. Cuda takes that lesson, as I said earlier, to go. It's like, okay, if this is dark, I understand. I need to be dark. I might need to be dark to fight this, and clear plans. Like I know I'm going to cross that line. I'm going to a place where there's no one around, and then I'm stopping it. Period. Knowing that balance is needed. It was just done. It was done so well that it resonated with me.
You know, it makes me a bit sad that I'm not more familiar with Moby Dick because I feel like there would be a whole lot of parallels for that I just am
Mm.
not getting.
Yeah, I somewhat agree.
I don't think this is a film that would be like, oh, they mentioned Moby Dick, so we're making the enemy a whale. I don't see it being that simplified.
I don't see it that simplified. So again, I'm not the most familiar with Moby Dick. I think I read like a a young reader's version of it when I was a young reader. um,
Guy hunts whale.
yeah.
Guy hunts whale.
So so of course don't get any of the literary aspects of it. Again, I almost go as that a bit of that lost in translation.
Mm.
I think Studio Chizu has a thing for whales. Let's face it, they've been prominent in the two that we've watched now.
Oh, that's true.
So I think there's an aspect of that. Uh, well, I can say this: the bit that they explained for Moby Dick about how it's like, yeah, sure, it's fighting the whale, but it's really not. It's fighting yourself. He's really fighting himself with the whale. That I think might have come across a little bit stronger if I said like if either we had the darkness from Ichiroku show more,
Mm.
because it never felt like he was fighting his own darkness when he was confronting Ichiroku. It was after that. It was after he'd already conquered the darkness, so he already defeated his whale.
Mm.
So I think that might be. I think they had that idea, but didn't quite
I see what you mean.
implement it in the right way. And again, I think that might be a lost in translation aspect from their side.
I mean, it could have been as simple as like, well, it's a whale.
Mm, it
But
could
I
have
mean,
been.
like, given that each of the boys is a different side of the same coin, it could simply just be different perspectives based on the Moby Dick story. So
Mm,
one's Ichirohiko and his whale versus Kyuta and his,
mm.
and the darkness just being a stand-in. I mean, it's not simple, but it's not overly complex. It makes sense
Yeah.
from this story's point of view.
Mhm. And it's very possible that they did take inspiration from it. Again,
Mm.
almost in the same way that Belle is clearly its own story that took inspiration from Beauty and the Beast, used Beauty and the Beast to tell its own story. So you get some of those images. And they may have just done the same thing here, where we clearly have our own story. There's some inspiration from it, but it's not that story. Be interesting to see when we look at the other films from the studio if we see similar literary stories where we see those kind of influences that are there but not quite in the way we would expect them to be.
And I mean, it's possible like seeing where the grounding of it is. Especially like Boy and the Beast, Mirai Bell. I'm wondering if this is like a second generation of Studio Ghibli,
Mm,
as the girl who leapt through time, Summer Wars, and Wolf Children. I mean, I haven't seen them, but just looking at their promotional material, they definitely look more closer to like a classic Japanese storytelling.
mm.
Whereas Boy and the Beast, Bell, and Mirai could have some more like Western influences.
That I could see that. Well, we know for a fact Belle had strong Western influences,
Yes, yes.
because they straight up said like it was a collaboration between Chizu and a guy who was from Disney
Mm.
when they met, right? They met at the awards. Are like, yeah, let's do a project together. Because one thing that did stand out to me, like right from the beginning, like again, just with the introducing the world through the monologue and such, I'm like, this immediately feels more Disney.
Yeah, definitely. It felt far more Disney than Belle did.
Yes.
Yeah, the only thing that it really needed was a female primary protagonist, and it would have been a Disney film. Uh,
We had Atlantis. I mean, they even had like the cute little animal companion.
you know what? I sent the picture to a friend of mine who I recommended Belle from. She's the one who was also really big about Carol Tuesday,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Oh my god, that's adorable. What is this?" And I'm like, "Boy and the Beast. This movie just gets me. Check it out."
Yeah, I saw the little mouse. I'm like, I want one.
Well, like it had the right like it could be a mouse, but what is it?
Yeah.
You know what? One thing, kind of talking about what is it? One thing that I really liked is when Ichirohiko was falling to the darkness. I kind of noticed the way that they were animating him. He looked far less human than even the
Mm.
beasts,
Yes.
and that it really gave me a not a vibe, but a feeling of what's her face? Great movie. Has it been that long that I've forgotten the name? Oh, Princess Kaguya.
Mm.
Like it
Oh
real
yes. Yes. Okay. No, I see exactly what you're saying.
yeah, like it really gave me that like beast scene feel,
Mm.
and that's how I knew like how messed up a situation that Ichirohiko was in. Not the fact that he just telekinetically stabbed freaking just all the names Kumatetsu.
Yeah.
That like sketchy animation on the face and eyes,
Mm.
and like just the right lack of definition. Mm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, it was. Yeah, I was like, I don't know where this is going. I expected someone to get seriously hurt, and I expected that to be the catalyst to have Kyuta
Mm.
go dark, and again, almost does. And I'm just like, that's not the one I expected something to happen to. Like, it probably should have, because
Everything was laid out.
yeah,
And I honestly, I if I wasn't on the emotional journey with this film, I probably would have caught it all immediately.
yeah,
I'd be like, oh yeah, this, and that is gonna happen, and this is how it's gonna end, and like, oh, that's not actually a beast. Which I mean, everybody was probably going, it's not a beast, anyways. But
yeah,
um, I was definitely misdirected by those emotional cues.
mhm,
Again, like pulling that lost in translation.
yeah.
it's far easier to pull apart when you're not on that emotional journey with it.
Yeah. I was actually one of the big emotional journey things that happened that hit me again. Talking about Kaede, who's absolutely stellar. When Kaede's like, I'm terrified, but you can't do this alone to go fight Ichirohiko. And her standing in front of Kyuta calling out Ichiroko Hiko.
Ichiro
And
Ichirohiko.
yeah, Ichirohiko. Yeah.
I mean, I'm probably
uh,
pronouncing it wrong.
it's I'm looking at it, it's like I should know how to say this, and just both his name and Kuma Kumatestsu have just these weird syllables that are tripping me out. um anyway, like I wrote down the line that you said, and there's a few things like what he lacks in his heart I'll fill up being said, or everyone has darkness in them. Even now, I'm struggling against it with all my strength. I'm like, that perfectly sums up everything there. And just standing up to it's like, oh, trust me, I want to hate you just as much as you're hating right now. It's
It's a,
powerful.
definitely, and like I didn't feel resonance with that, but she's not the only one who was making statements like that.
Yeah.
Even Kumatetsu's straight up just saying, like, I'll make up for what's missing inside his heart.
Yeah.
It's all about like that emotional resonance between all these characters and Yuta slash Ren.
Yeah.
That making him a real boy.
Yeah.
What I was worried, you know what I was worried about, kind of switching to characters.
Hmm.
Kaeda, when she was first introduced, I had a flashback to that Community episode where, like a Halloween special, where it's like, "Teach me to read," and then it turns out being like, "I'm actually a werewolf that eats selfish vampires." Anyways, um, I like had that kind of moment, which didn't pull me out of it, but it was a little entertaining thing in the back of my head.
Hmm.
Uh, but I also had I was worried that she was going to take away from the film
Hmm.
because it was so different than what was already going on.
Yeah.
But it's nice that it filled a spot that I think if she wasn't in the film, I would say something was missing.
Yes.
They're like that those interactions, especially when you're like with Kyuta and you're trying to balance this confusion, like does he live in the world of humans or does he live in the world of the beasts?
Yeah.
And creating that structure and that confusion for him was definitely required. And I guess from the emotional beats,
Hmm.
having having a broader net, so it's
Yeah.
more impactful for more people. As like having her in the film, I don't think you would be as positive as you are about the
Hmm.
film if she was missing, if she was
Yeah.
not in it.
Oh, I agree because I had that same fear. It's like, oh, this is quite a jump. And clearly, it looks like the studio likes to jump between worlds
Mhm.
from what we've seen. So both films doing it in different ways with different types of pacing for it. Uh, because let me step back for a second. So Belle, we always kind of jumped between the two worlds, so we always had an idea of what's happening.
Mhm.
This one here took quite a long time to jump back to the other world. So I'm like, ooh, I could see this derailing pretty quickly. Uh, just if it wasn't handled well.
Just got like vision in my head now. It's like, teach me to read. Oh, here's how you read. Oh yeah, now you're in college. Oh yeah, and then the world of the beast has gone to the wayside.
Well, that's almost a fear that I had,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And it would just be he stumbles back into it afterwards or something, and who knows how that turned out because it'd be so easy to fall into that type of oh, it was, that idea of oh maybe it was a dream or obviously I wouldn't go that way. It's like oh this just isn't part of my world anymore, and that's how the film ends. But it's fine there. Actually, kind of surprised me a little bit that they said it's like yeah they basically implied he never goes back to the world of the beasts. Um, I almost expected them to kind of the two worlds to kind of merge a little bit more.
No, I wonder. I think in the future I'll be able to come to it because these films, well, at least in the Ghibli ones, there's always some like morbid background thing that's going on.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, this is actually about. It's like, oh, they're dead the entire time. But the thing is, like, it's grounded enough because she ends up going to the world of the beast in the end.
Yeah.
But something definitely, if I had like a weird non-traditional theory about this, it would be that the entire story actually happened and that is happening in the head of Hayate as she's having some type of emotional break.
Yeah, I feel like that one might be a little bit of a stretch though.
It's for those type of theories, it's the only one that I think could make sense for this film. But it,
Well, I mean, okay, if you were going to go with that, I would have gone with either. I could see that being Ichirohiko having that mental break,
mm,
or Kyuta kind of being at Alice in Wonderland type escape.
mm.
Could be another way that I go with it. Then clearly there wasn't that type of imagery in there. Well, no, because he didn't follow the white rabbit.
They followed the flowers.
Yeah. uh, I, I, I don't. I feel like these films are. I feel like they are what they are on the surface.
I definitely feel that way.
Yeah.
It's well, and it's one of the problems that I have with a lot of the Ghibli films is like throwing too many various threads into a film that are just half realized thoughts. It's kind of like
Mm.
a Ghibli hallmark at this time, except for Earwig, which was half a string, and the story didn't go anywhere. Uh, the but we didn't see that when we were watching Nausicaa. So,
Yeah.
um, and I guess as before, like the way that they do the storytelling, so I'm looking forward to any Studio Chizu film,
Mhm.
even if it looks silly.
Oh, I completely agree. Yeah, no, there's one part that had me kind of questioning the reality of the film, and it was just the continued the continued times his mother appeared to him.
Mm.
Because in my mind, it's going just again not knowing the quite knowing the rules of the world. I'm like, is this a memory? Is this a spirit? Is she actually there? Just because it happened consistently enough and right when need it, but didn't quite have that same dreamlike quality that you would see it as a memory.
I wasn't super keen on that, but when I realized that it stopped happening once he at least was starting to feel that people were taking care of him,
Mhm.
that's when she stopped showing up.
Yeah,
So I think that was just a self-defense mechanism, him thinking of her in those ways and kind of like projecting it outwards.
yeah,
It's like when you think about someone hard enough, you can kind of hear their voice.
yeah. I don't disagree with that. Most of these failings are still small failings. It was the that wasn't it wasn't clearly conveyed in the actual animation of it.
Mm.
So instead of being able to say, yes, this is the coping mechanism, right? This is how he's getting through. I instead had questions like, are they in the spirit world? Is he in heaven?
Yeah, it was and until he went back, I was either thinking that he was having some type of breakdown or that he had died.
Yeah.
I mean, I was along for the ride anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just like, and you get that. I wonder what happened to I can't remember the director's name. What happened to his mother? This is both films now where it's like, and the mother just, like tragically dies. It's like, oh.
Well, and we should brace ourselves for the ending of Wolf Children and oh no, looking at the cover of Wolf Children, the lady in this does not have wolf ears. Well, the kids do.
Oh, okay.
And I'm worried about Mirai. Well, I mean, that means the wolf kids.
Yeah.
Mother probably did. And looking at Mirai, either an adolescent or a teenage girl and like toddler.
Yeah.
Where's the mother? If this is gonna be a ongoing theory, I'm gonna be dead.
Yeah, I, I mean, and it's very possible that something did happen, and it's if something happened and we do see that continue throughout the films, I can say good work on exploring these complex themes and doing it in a very accessible way.
And from different
Right.
point of views. So
Yes.
it's one thing to rehash the same thing in the same way, but to do it and from different perspectives is probably what is going to end up making the studio a great in the long run.
Mhm. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of the parallels there, but it was never, I never questioned that it was a rehash. I could just tell that there were those same beats, which is again why questions like, I wonder if something happened to the director and this is how he's dealing with it. Kudos on how well written the stories are. Like, I'm invested in them.
Oh, now I'm wondering if the girl who leapt through time is actually leaping backwards through time because she needs to meet her mom who passed away. Studio Chizu is gonna have me call my mom.
Yeah, I can get that.
Well, thankfully for this film, it had me enough that at no point did I compare it to Belle while watching it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until the very end that I was like, okay, Belle is the better movie, like
Yeah.
objectively speaking. But I like the boy or the boy and the beast far more.
Yeah. And that's fair.
I think in the long run out after Kyuta, Kumatetsu was probably graced with at least 6 out of 7 talented students.
Yeah, but one ran away.
Clever.
And lots of hearts. Voice acting was good. As I said, I'm making all these comparisons to Belle after the fact. Never entered my mind. The only thing that entered my mind is like, huh. So we did Beauty and the Beast. Why not Boy and the Beast? 'Cause- uh, but yeah, never entered my mind, and which is good because we've watched films where we have no choice but to compare it to other ones, or we can't separate it.
Well, you know what? A great comparison of this, I think, is I'm going to make a statement about uh, generalized perspectives of boys and girls.
Hmm.
Of course, this does not hold true to everyone. Blah 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 blah. Not some asshole, but I feel like for the most part, Belle was able to accurately represent the heart of a girl, where Boy and the Beast was accurate represent the heart of a boy.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Again, you got those similar situations, and the bits that I know of psychology and sociology is boys act out, girls shut down, which is exactly what we saw. Yeah, no, I could see that.
And of course, like it's a day and age where you have to overly disclaim. There's of course outliers and people who don't feel either way. So,
Yeah.
but it's something that again, like I'm more excited for a potential new Studio Chizu release at this point than a new Studio Ghibli.
Mm.
Not that Earwig has soured me to Ghibli, but I feel like Ghibli's not exploring in the same way they used to.
Mm.
Whereas being a fresh studio, Studio Chizu just has so much room for activities.
Yeah.
So I'm excited, and I do worry because it does look like Belle is getting like a significant amount of success,
Yeah.
which I really hope that Studio Chizu stays authentic to itself and doesn't say try to appeal to Western audiences
Mhm.
or especially the Western commercialism. I mean, it's probably already fighting to remain independent, or however independent it is in Japan, to have it be pushed in the ways that we see, like the way Netflix ruins things, or
Yeah,
it would just, I'd hate for them to get off track.
yeah.
That would actually make me sad. Whereas at this point, like I don't really have any investment into Ghibli.
Hmm. Well, I think so. You're right. I hope they don't. I hope they don't give in to that. Um, I mean, I don't. I'm not quite as concerned with that because I don't see that happening in the same way from a lot of the Asian media we've been watching.
Hmm.
And again, even though Belle is definitely taking off and definitely going to be putting them on the map, I know that The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, Mirai, they've been films that I've seen mentioned before, and like these are high quality, must watch uh, type films. So, um, so I think they're
Yeah, I do. I feel like Chizu films are going to awaken people to this type of storytelling, much like how Ghibli was really doing it back in like late 80s, early 90s, and then again in like the early 2000s.
yeah,
The way that it was kind of being like, oh, this is great storytelling, and they do characters right, and characters aren't just a demographic; they're actually complex and whole.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think so. I think this is just going to bring that resurgence, and yeah. So Mirai, Mirai is the animated film that won Best Picture from them
Hmm.
at the Oscars. So I mean, there's pedigree there. Again, Belle, I believe did well on
Well, I
the
mean,
film festival circuit before it ever got released here.
the
Um,
Oscars. A
yeah.
bunch of people paying to receive an award. The as we know, the only film awards that matter are the Batby Awards.
That is true.
If a company wants to pay us to receive a Batby Award, sure,
we we
but
do have one called the Nepotism Award.
I believe it is called the Nepotista.
Oh yeah, sorry, the Nepotista. My bad.
Yeah, you can pay us for us to give you an award, but we're gonna name it whatever we want without your
Yeah.
input.
um, it's yeah, no, you're right. I'm excited to see what they're doing, what they're going to do as well. I think the storytelling here is a little bit more, I said, a bit more straightforward on the surface, whereas Ghibli very much isn't.
Mhm.
I do feel, again, I still find it interesting that your two least favorite Ghibli films were both written by the same author. um,
Wait, which ones
and
do I dislike?
Howl and Earwig, they were both written by the same author.
No, Earwig's better than Howl's.
I'm just saying.
I don't hate Earwig.
You- you- um, but anyway, I think there's clearly. I feel like Chizu has a little bit more, like slightly bit more Western influence in the way the storytelling is done.
Mhm.
Whereas, as we've kind of discussed, like it feels like Ghibli is very much that Asian storytelling in a lot of the way the story beats go,
I mean,
and
just
tends
like
to
the
be a lot
fact,
more.
the inclusion of just like, oh yeah, this is a mountain spirit, and we call it six different things.
Mm,
That's not something that jives for Western audiences. They end
yeah,
up being like, oh, this is the mountain god,
yeah,
and then to localize it. I think is definitely expressed, or at least more Western friendly on the Chizu front.
yeah,
But still, well, remaining its own.
yes. Um, yeah, I think it's just interesting to see that that juxtaposition,
Mhm.
uh, and I do think I think a lot of the Ghibli films, while can be watched casually, you need to. You're putting yourself at disservice watching them casually to get a lot of the deeper meanings. And we've seen that in our Ghibli conversations. It's like they tend to always be, okay, nope, this is kind of deep and not in any way the way we figure the conversation is going to go. I feel like you could get away watching the Chizu films more casually, and that's not a bad thing. You definitely get a lot from paying attention. And I feel like I'm rambling, and the thought was in my head, and I don't know if I said it well. If I said it crappy, edit this out.
Just remember, when in doubt, ride a river dragon for no reason.
It wasn't for no reason.
With that, this has been Beardy and the Beast Media Club. As always, if you like what we do, like and subscribe, and join the conversation in the comments or at our Discord. Join us next time where we discuss the film Cabin in the Woods. Later.